We're living in a difficult period where food prices going through the roof, empty shelves where there used to be plenty. It's enough to make anyone nervous. But out here, in the wild, we know there's always a way to survive. And sometimes the best way to survive is to get your hands dirty right here in your own backyard. That's right, we're talking about survival gardening. It's about taking control of your food supply, building resilience for whatever comes your way, and connecting with nature on a fundamental level. Trust me, there's nothing more satisfying than eating food you've grown yourself. It's primal, it's empowering, it's survival. And the best part? It's not as hard as you think. Stick with me, and I'll teach you the skills you need to turn your backyard into a thriving source of fresh, nutritious food. Out here in the wild, we learn to respect the power of nature. We see firsthand how unpredictable it can be. One minute you've got clear skies, the next you're battling a torrential downpour. It's the same with our food systems. We rely on complex supply chains, global trade, and a whole lot of hope that nothing will go wrong. But what happens when something does go wrong? What happens when those supply chains break down, when those supermarket shelves stay empty? That's when self-reliance becomes more than just a good idea. It becomes essential. That's where survival gardening comes in. It's about taking control of your own destiny, about ensuring you and your family have access to fresh, nutritious food, no matter what chaos is unfolding in the world outside. And let's be clear, this isn't just about prepping for some doomsday scenario. This is about building resilience into your everyday life. It's about understanding where your food comes from, about connecting with the natural world, and about developing skills that will serve you well, no matter what life throws your way. Now, you're thinking, I'm no gardener. I can barely keep a houseplant alive. But if I can learn to survive in the harshest environments on Earth, you can learn to grow a few tomatoes. It's all about starting small, building a solid foundation, and not being afraid to get your hands dirty. Out here in the wild, we learn by doing. We adapt, we improvise, and we never give up. And there's another side to this, something that goes beyond the practicalities of food security. Gardening, getting your hands in the soil, nurturing life from a tiny seed, it's a deeply rewarding experience. It connects you to the natural world in a way that nothing else can. It teaches you patience, resilience, and the simple satisfaction of creating something with your own two hands. So, are you ready to ditch the supermarket and embrace the power of survival gardening? Let's get started. We know that the right gear can mean the difference between success and failure. And in the world of survival gardening, your seeds are your most important piece of kit. Now, you can't just go grabbing any old packet of seeds. You need to choose wisely, selecting varieties that are going to give you the most bang for your buck in terms of yield, nutrition, and resilience. First up, let's talk about yield. You want crops that are going to produce a lot of food for the space they take up. Some of my top picks include tomatoes, beans, and potatoes. These bad boys are nutritional powerhouses and relatively easy to grow, even for beginner gardeners. Next, you need to think about resilience. We're talking about varieties that can handle a bit of heat, a bit of drought, and maybe even a pest or two. Look for words like heat-tolerant, drought-resistant, and disease-resistant on your seed packets. And here's a pro tip: consider heirloom seeds. These are varieties that have been passed down through generations of gardeners, selected for their flavor, resilience, and ability to thrive in specific climates. Plus, you can save the seeds from your harvest and plant them again next year, creating a sustainable cycle of food production. Remember, diversity is key. Just like in the wild, you want a good mix of plants to ensure a steady supply of food throughout the growing season. Don't be afraid to experiment and find what works best in your climate and soil type. Choosing the right seeds is the first step towards building a successful survival garden. It's about more than just putting food on the table. It's about creating a sustainable food system that will nourish you and your family for years to come. Prepping your battlefield. Garden bed. We've got our seeds, now it's time to prepare the battlefield. The garden bed. Just like any good survivalist, you need to know your terrain. And in gardening, that means understanding your soil. Soil is the foundation of your garden, the lifeblood that nourishes your plants. So, before you even think about planting, you need to get your hands dirty and get to know your soil. Start by conducting a simple soil test. You can pick up a kit at your local garden center or online. This will tell you the pH level of your soil, as well as the levels of essential nutrients. Once you know what you're working with, you can start amending your soil to create the perfect growing environment for your plants. This might involve adding compost, manure, or other organic matter to improve drainage, aeration, and nutrient content. Next up, location. Just like finding a good shelter in the wild, choosing the right spot for your garden is crucial. Look for a spot that gets at least 6 hours of sunlight a day, has good drainage, and is protected from strong winds. Now, let's talk about pests and diseases. These guys are like the pesky insects you encounter in the wild. They can wreak havoc if you're not careful. But don't worry, we're not going to resort to any extreme measures here. Instead, we're going to focus on building a healthy ecosystem in your garden. This means attracting beneficial insects like ladybugs and lacewings, which will help keep those pesky pests in check. You can also use natural pest control methods like neem oil, insecticidal soap, and diatomaceous earth. These are effective ways to deter pests without harming beneficial insects or the environment. Finally, let's talk about water. Water is essential for plant growth, but it's also a precious resource that we need to conserve. Make sure you're watering your garden efficiently. Water deeply and less often. And consider using a soaker hose or drip irrigation system to deliver water directly to the roots of your plants, where it's needed most. Getting your hands dirty. Planting and care. We've got our seeds, our soil is prepped, and we're ready to plant. Now, there are 2 main ways to start your seeds. Direct sowing and starting seeds indoors. Direct sowing is exactly what it sounds like, planting your seeds directly into the ground. This method is best for seeds that are large and easy to handle, like beans, peas, and squash. Starting seeds indoors gives your plants a head start on the growing season. This is especially useful for slow-growing plants like tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants. If you're starting your seeds indoors, you'll need to use seed trays or small pots filled with seed-starting mix. Once your seedlings have developed a few sets of true leaves, you can transplant them into your garden. Now, even the toughest plants need a little TLC to thrive. That's where regular weeding, watering, and fertilizing come in. Weeding might seem like a chore, but it's essential for giving your plants the space and nutrients they need to grow. Think of it as clearing out the competition, just like in the wild. Watering is crucial, especially during dry spells. Remember to water deeply and less often, and try to water in the morning so the leaves have time to dry out before nightfall. Fertilizing gives your plants an extra boost of nutrients. You can use organic fertilizers like compost tea or fish emulsion. Just like us, plants need a balanced diet to thrive. And here's another pro-tip: companion planting. This involves planting different crops together that benefit each other. For example, planting basil next to your tomatoes can help deter pests and improve flavor. Remember, gardening is a learning process. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. The important thing is to keep learning, keep experimenting, and never give up. Reaping the rewards, harvesting and preserving, this is it, the moment we've all been waiting for. Harvest time. There's nothing quite like the satisfaction of picking fresh homegrown produce from your own backyard. But before you start harvesting everything in sight, it's important to know when each crop is at its peak ripeness. Tomatoes, for example, should be picked when they're red and firm, while beans should be harvested when they're still young and tender. Once you've harvested your bounty, it's time to preserve it so you can enjoy the fruits of your labor all year round. Drying is one of the oldest and simplest methods of food preservation. It works by removing the moisture from food, which prevents bacteria and mold from growing. You can dry herbs, fruits, and even vegetables like tomatoes and peppers. Canning is another great way to preserve your harvest. It involves heating food to a high temperature to kill bacteria, then sealing it in airtight jars. You can fruits, vegetables, jams, jellies, and even meats. Freezing is a quick and easy way to preserve food. Simply blanch your vegetables to stop enzyme action, then pack them into freezer-safe containers. You can also freeze fruits, herbs, and even sauces and soups. By learning how to preserve your harvest, you're taking another step towards self-sufficiency. You're creating a stockpile of food that will see you through the lean times, whether it's a natural disaster, an economic downturn, or simply a long winter. So there you have it. We've covered the basics of building your own survival garden. This isn't just about growing food, it's about cultivating resilience, self-reliance, and a deeper connection with nature. It's about taking control of your own destiny, one seed at a time. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty, to experiment, and to learn from your mistakes. Just like in the wild, the most important thing is to adapt, improvise, and never give up. Now get out there, build your survival garden, and stay alive out there, in your backyard.